Welcome everyone to the Business Overview video walkthrough, which highlights the 5 lessons that encapsulate the Business Overview module. During this module, students will have an opportunity to learn about core business concepts and also investigate an esports organization of their choice to learn more about the business end of esports. This module lasts 5 lessons, and I want to highlight a few items for each lesson. So we'll just kind of dig in with each lesson, and I'll provide a few thoughts to consider as you implement these lessons. Lesson 1 will really center ourselves around initial research. We'll have an opportunity to let students know what the challenge is, what it all entails. And students in lesson number 1 will have a chance to engage in some initial research. They'll have a chance to engage in some research around those core business concepts that we spoke about earlier, but also their chosen esports organization that they'd like to learn more about. That will all happen in lesson number 1. Lesson number 1 will also introduce students to their student learning guide, which is a supplemental additional document that gives them space and places to document their thoughts, to revise their thoughts, and to channel their thinking. So in lesson 1, they'll have a chance to learn about the overview of the challenge, the steps they'll need to take to be successful in that challenge. And before lesson number 1 is over, they'll have a chance to engage in pages 2 and pages 3. Page 2 allows them to do some initial research around some of those core business concepts they'll need to know and understand. There's a list of concepts to get them started. Also, we hope students in lesson number 1 can get to page 3 of the student learning guide as well, which gives them some organizations to consider exploring. They may have one already that they want to explore that may go beyond this list, and that is certainly okay. But this does provide a few starting places for those who might need it. You also see that there is an esports organization profile we want them to fill out as well. This allows them to think about the organization's history, its mission, where we can find them on social media, and who some of the key players are in that organization as well, and maybe any financial information that's already readily available for us. So that profile is something they may get started on day 1, lesson 1, but may also continue to update it as they learn more about their organization. So that's lesson 1. Lesson 2 goes into preparation for organization outreach. So it's not enough just to learn about the organization through our initial research online, which will be helpful. We want to learn more, and we want to schedule and get an interview on the books with a representative from that organization. To do so, we're going to have a chance to think about what key questions would we want to ask during that interview. So before we even reach out, we want to have a sense of where our curiosity is with that organization, especially those curiosities and questions that align to the business side of their organization. And so we want to be able to be prepared for that interview when it does happen. So lesson 2 is all about getting the right interview questions in place before we reach out and make that ask for the interview. This will lead students to page number 4 on the student learning guide, which will give them space to think about what those high priority questions are that they want to ask their organization. Again, especially those that relate to the business side of their esports organization. Lesson 3 allows students some time to email and send their compositions to the representatives of those organizations. So during this lesson, they're going to have a chance to think about what are those key strategies for calling and emailing, especially in a professional setting. So there'll be some time to build their capacity around that. And in lesson 3, they're going to have a chance to actually compose that email. And when it is approved, actually send it off to representatives from that organization to ask them to engage in an interview to learn more about especially the business side of what they're doing. The student learning guide on page 5 will give students additional tips on how to write a really professional and sincere email. And so there's some tips there and some space for them to draft. And again, upon your approval as a teacher, they can send those off and see what comes back. Lesson 4 gives students an opportunity to draft a letter of interest to that organization as well. This letter of interest will give students an opportunity to kind of get a chance to maybe get involved with their organization at a deeper level. That may come through volunteer work, internships, or other general projects and activities they might be a part of to move in the direction and help support that organization as they grow and progress. So this draft letter of interest will give students a chance to get their thoughts on paper first. This draft will be up for review in the next lesson, but this lesson will be all about what makes a good draft letter of interest and how can we get started. And as students get started on that student learning guide will be there to support them. Page number 6 will give them some practical and useful tips, and again, some space to write their letter of interest to that organization they've been investigating. Lesson 5, and the final lesson in this series, will allow them some time to finalize their letter. After getting some feedback on that letter, they'll eventually post their thoughts for the rest of the class to review as well. But this is a chance for them to gain an even deeper connection to that organization. While sending the letter off may not be a mandatory item, it certainly could be an encouraged item for those who really want to dig in and make a tighter connection with their organization. As they finalize their letter, page number 7 of the student learning guide will be there to support them. So that's a quick overview of the 5 lessons that again allow students an opportunity to learn key business concepts and really understand how those concepts live in other organizations, especially an esports organization of their choice. So they're going to learn more. They're going to reach out and hopefully get an interview to learn even more about that business side of esports and write a letter of interest that they might send to continue that partnership as well. A few considerations that you might have as you implement this module and the accompanying lessons. Just the general timing of the lessons. These are geared toward 50-minute classes. You might extend or contract some of the different activities along the way to make sure you're meeting those timing needs. You might even consider the sequence of lessons, maybe not rearranging the sequence necessarily, but pressing pause perhaps between lesson number 3 and lesson number 4. Lesson number 3 gives students an opportunity to compose and send an email asking for an interview to learn more about that esports organization and the business side of things. Before they actually write their letter of interest, you might want to provide some time for students to actually schedule the interviews, conduct those interviews, and debrief on the key takeaways from those interviews before you go into lessons 4 and 5. So that'll be up to you to consider. And finally, the student learning guide is there to help students. They can make a copy of the template, but you might want to change and update the template before you issue it to students to add other resources and other thoughts and directions as you see fit. Thank you for listening, and we hope you have great luck as you implement the business overview module for esports.